One submarine, one man, one decision. In 1962, deep beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean, a Soviet submarine, cut off from all contact with Moscow, found itself isolated and blind. Its crew, exhausted and under immense pressure, believed that the unthinkable had happened. Nuclear war had already begun. Armed with a weapon powerful enough to incinerate an entire city, they were just seconds away from making a decision that would have changed human history forever. Simmering tension known as the Cold War. Both superpowers possessed arsenals of nuclear missiles, each pointed with deadly accuracy at the other cities. In schools, children practiced hiding under their desks. A first strike that could arrive without warning and end civilization in a flash of light. This global anxiety reached its absolute peak in October of 1962. The discovery of Soviet nuclear missile sites in Cuba, just a stone's throw from American shores, pushed the world to the very brink of annihilation. For 13 terrifying days, humanity held its breath as leaders in Washington and Moscow engaged in a high-stakes standoff. One miscalculation, one misinterpreted signal. One single mistake could trigger a full-scale nuclear exchange, a catastrophe from which there would be no return. It was into this cauldron of fear and suspicion that the Soviet Union secretly dispatched a fleet of 4 Foxtrot-class submarines. Their destination, Cuba. And one, a single devastatingly powerful torpedo tipped with a nuclear warhead. This weapon, designated the special weapon, had a destructive yield comparable to the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The authority to launch this weapon was given to the submarine's captain, but only with the unanimous agreement of his political officer. At least, that was the procedure on paper. Among these submarines was B-59, commanded by Captain Valentin Savitsky. As B-59 and its sister subs sailed from the Arctic into the warmer waters of the Atlantic, they ran headlong into an American naval quarantine lineup, massive fleet of warships tasked with stopping any Soviet vessels heading to Cuba. American destroyers and anti-submarine aircraft relentlessly hunted the Soviet subs, dropping practice depth charges to force them to the surface. For the crew of B-59 deep below, these explosions were terrifying. They had no way of knowing if they were practice rounds or live explosives. They had no way of knowing if war had already broken out on the surface. The crew of submarine B-59 found themselves in a terrifying situation, patrolling the waters near Cuba. Out of nowhere, American warships appeared, surrounding them completely. Suddenly, explosions began to rock their vessel. The Americans were dropping practice depth charges, a signal for the submarine to surface and identify itself. But deep beneath the waves, with no way to know the true nature of the charges, the situation felt entirely different. To the men inside the cramped, sweltering confines of B-59, it felt like an attack. It felt like war. The submarine was a steel coffin, cut off from the world. The radio couldn't penetrate the ocean depths to receive signals from Moscow. There was no news, no updates, no confirmation of what was happening on the surface. All they knew was that tensions were at a breaking point, and now they were being bombarded. In the minds of the captain and his crew, there was only one logical conclusion. World War III had started. And if that was true, they had a protocol to follow. They had a weapon that could change the course of history in a single, fiery blast. What the American fleet didn't know was that B-59 wasn't just any submarine. It was carrying a secret and devastating payload, a T-5 nuclear torpedo. This single weapon had a destructive yield comparable to the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. One explosion would have vaporized the American carrier and its escort ships, sending a radioactive mushroom cloud into the sky and ensuring an immediate all-out nuclear response from the United States. Soviet naval protocol was clear. If the submarine was attacked and its hull was breached, the captain was authorized to launch the nuclear torpedo. With explosions echoing around them, Captain Valentin Savitsky was convinced that moment had come. He ordered the nuclear torpedo to be prepared for launch. The ship's political officer, Ivan Maslenikov, gave his consent. 2 out of the 3 senior officers on board had agreed. The launch sequence began. The fate of the world now rested on the shoulders of the third and final man. The man who said no was Vasili Arkhipov. As second in command of the submarine B-59, he was the one person who also had to agree to launch the nuclear torpedo. But he questioned everything. He looked at the chaos, the panic, the absolute certainty of the captain and the political officer, and he asked the questions no one else dared to. What if this is a mistake? What if the war hasn't actually started? What if the depth charges are just signals meant to force us to the surface, not destroy us? For hours, the argument raged deep beneath the waves. The 3 men, locked in the sweltering control room, were deciding the fate of the world. Savitsky, the captain, was adamant. He was convinced they were under attack and that their families back home were likely already dead. He screamed at Arkhipov, calling him a coward. The political officer agreed. Launched the missile, fulfilled their duty, but Arkhipov held firm. Inside the submarine, the situation was becoming critical. The air conditioning had failed long ago. The temperature soared past 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Carbon dioxide levels were dangerously high, and men were beginning to faint from the heat and lack of oxygen. The walls dripped with condensation. Still, through it all, Arkhipov refused to give his consent. He would not be the man who started World War III based on a guess. Finally, after hours of grueling debate and with his crew on the verge of collapse, Captain Savitsky relented. Exhausted and defeated, he agreed with Arkhipov's desperate proposal. They would surface. They would break radio silence and find out what was truly happening in the world above. Slowly, the crippled submarine rose from the depths, breaking through the waves into the cool night air. And what did they find? No war. No atomic clouds mushrooming over the horizon. No fiery Armageddon. They were met by the American warships, which were surprised to see them. There had been no attack. The depth charges were non-lethal practice rounds, the standard U.S. Navy signal for forcing a submarine to identify itself. It was all a terrifying, catastrophic misunderstanding. One man's calm courage, his refusal to bow to fear and pressure in the most stressful environment imaginable, had single-handedly prevented a nuclear exchange that would have killed millions, perhaps billions. And for decades, the world had absolutely no idea how close it had come, or who the silent savior was that had pulled it back from the brink. And so, we're left to wonder. What really keeps the world from the brink? In an age defined by technological marvels and geopolitical chess, we often place our faith in systems, in strategies, in the cold logic of deterrence. We tell ourselves that fail-safes and protocols are what guarantee our survival. But the story of that one day, in that one submarine, tells us something different. It suggests that when all the complex machinery of power has been set in motion, when the world holds its breath, the final line of defense might not be a system at all. It might just be the conscience of a single human being. Think about it. The fate of millions, perhaps the entire course of human history, didn't rest on a summit of world leaders or a breakthrough in technology. It rested on the shoulders of one tired officer faced with an unimaginable choice. His decision reminds us that beneath the grand narratives of nations and ideologies, history is ultimately a collection of individual human moments. Moments of fear, moments of doubt, and, thankfully, moments of profound courage and humanity. History is filled with the stories of wars fought, of cities conquered, and empires fallen. We build monuments to generals and remember the dates of great battles. But what about the wars that were never fought? What about the moments when disaster was averted, not by force, but by restraint? These stories often fade into the background, forgotten by the very world they saved. They are the quiet victories, the unseen triumphs of the human spirit. If you believe that stories like these deserve to be told, that the hidden chapters of our past hold crucial lessons for our future, then you've found a home here. We are Velvet Night History, and we are dedicated to uncovering the tales that time has forgotten. Subscribe to join us on this journey, because the next story we share might just change the way you see everything.